Hi, Deanna. Hi, Mary Jane. You're early. Hi, everybody. Just a couple more minutes and we'll get started. Thanks for jumping in. If you want, while you're waiting, you just type in the chat box there. If you know how to find that, you go up to the little toolbar and you'll see a more function to the right for me, and it says chat. You can just tell me where you're coming in from. I think we're going to have a lot of folks from North Carolina today, which is going to be cool. Thanks for sharing, Mary. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Muggy and hot here. Yeah, of course. It's June in the South, right? That's just the nature of things. I might have met a few of you in oh shoot, what's the town? Bermuda Run. I was there for the administrative conference in 2019, so just last year, and it was a really lovely time to come down to North Carolina. I spent some time in Georgia with my family, and man, getting out of the mountains in April is it's a wonderful time to leave. So it was nice to be down there. Okay, well, I've got it's 3 o'clock on the nose, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Anthony Poponi, and I'm the author and the founder of Focus on the 40. I do presentations, keynotes, coaching, workshop trainings, and of course, virtual stuff now that we can't do those things with people in our homes or, I'm sorry, in our workplaces, at least for now. So hopefully that comes back around. And I think that's one of the big focuses of what we're talking about today, that things are just really different for all of us. And, we're having to navigate this new normal that's still being shaped. Like we thought it was kind of coming into clear view. And then you read something today, at least I did, about, how we're expecting spikes to come back in COVID in September and October. And then it'll probably follow the pattern of pneumonia over the winter. So we're not done with this virus. And then on top of it, look at all the stuff that's just happened since George Floyd passed away in Minnesota, and how that's created just turmoil on top of what was already turmoil. So the new normal is constantly being shaped, and so hopefully what you get out of today is the ability to deal with what I will call emotion sickness. It's just like being topsy-turvy and having all this anxiety and dealing with this uncertainty. So that's the focus of what we're doing today. So if you see me pop this up, and I'll do this a couple different times during our presentation today, it's an opportunity for you to chat, use the chat box feature. And if you don't know how to use that, it's at the top of your screen. Most of you have used Zoom before, at least in the last few months. You probably used it more than you've ever used it in your life. But you can pop in that chat feature, and I'd love to hear from you. Including if you have some laughter, little jokes, or just little anecdotes. I love to see those as well. I can't always respond because I am kind of navigating, keeping the presentation moving, but I would love to hear what you have to say. So here's your first opportunity to do something to chat with me. So what's your anxiety level right now, and maybe one word why? So I'll give you a scale, and it'll go from, on the left-hand side, you're as cool as a cucumber, or as chill as a dill. And, that's just like, hey, I'm just dealing with all this well. Things in my life are okay. I'm not really that stressed out. Or maybe you're all the way on the other end of the spectrum, and that's what I will call anxiety girl, able to jump to the worst conclusion in a single bound. And that's one of the big focuses for today, is that anxiety piece, right? And of course, it's not just anxiety girl. We have some opportunities to talk about optimism man and pessimism dude a little bit later on today. Or maybe you're kind of right in the middle, and this is one of my favorite favorite actors from the movie The Big Lebowski, which I think is my favorite documentary. All right, so use that chat box, and let's see where you guys are on those. And I would put myself kind of like, right in the middle. I'm kind of there where Jeffrey Lebowski is right now, like some ups and downs, some gutters and some strikes in my life. And and that's part of naturally what we're going to be talking about too today, is that just things go up and down, and it can be moment to moment, it can be day to day, it can be week to week, right? So we're seeing Mary Jane saying anxiety girl. Catherine's on the other end, as cool as a cucumber or as chill as a dill. And we'll wait for a couple more responses in there, but thank you for sharing those. And a couple more responses coming in there. Nope, same ones. So, really what we want to talk about is like, what's realistically happening here with each of us, and what are we feeling, and why are we feeling those things, and how do we navigate our way through those things and really take control of those. So, a big part of what we're trying to work on today is that anxiety girl or guy, and we've got some tools, so hang on. All right, let's talk first about today's itinerary. So, first thing we're going to talk about is stress, anxiety, and what I call the big three. The second part is understanding your wiring and how to rewire things. And we're going to talk about the wiring and rewiring in the frame of neuroplasticity, and how we have the ability to kind of take these neural pathways, this neural wiring that we have, and we have the ability to rewire it. Then we're going to talk about building optimism and resilience. They're two really great tools to help us with all this anxiety and uncertainty. And first, I always like to start off my live presentations with a group activity. Today, we can't really do that as a group. You maybe go outside and do something really quick, but instead, we'll do something called impractical knots. And so, if you're working on a ship, and we'll go into sailing a little bit here, and then some of the emails that you'll get from me tonight with your homework. Yes, you're going to have homework, don't worry. But knots are a really valuable thing, and I've spent a lot of time on the water and in the ocean and on boats and rafting out here in Colorado. And some knots are really practical and really needed, and some maybe aren't that helpful. So, how you want to tie the strongest knot ever? Of course, just put your headphones in your pocket and then just wait a minute, and they come out looking like this, which is absolutely unbelievable. So, we're going to talk about how to kind of untangle some of those emotions that you have as well today. So pay attention for that. Now, I talked to you about, the fact that I lived in the Caribbean for a while. I also lived in Hawaii. And here's a shot from me on Kaneohe Bay in Hawaii. And, I lived in Hawaii for 3.5 years, and about 4 years ago now. But before that, I lived in the Caribbean, and I worked with sea turtles, and I got my dive certification. That's my actual dive card from 1996. I was in the band Hanson apparently at that time as well, and I think I was the fourth member, and I never really got on stage. And I worked on this boat. That photo in the top left corner for you is a boat that I worked on, and if you could see, my ears all red there because I got hit by a Portuguese man of war, which is it stings like a jellyfish, though it's not really related to a jellyfish. But I love the ocean, and I love salt water. And this is the actual boat I worked on. I'm not kidding you. That's the actual boat. It's a pontoon boat. We went out on Kaneohe Bay. It wasn't necessarily the fanciest yacht in the world. I call it the USS Tetanus. And we went out onto Kaham Bay for a 3-hour tour, not this kind of 3-hour tour. But if you think about other boats, is that, you think about these emotions that we're going through. It's like a cruise ship, like with a roller coaster on the cruise ship, and that cruise ship is in a hurricane. And it's just going all over the place. We're bouncing all over the place. We're moving. It's uncontrolled. It has ups and downs and highs and lows. And sometimes we don't even know what's coming, and we just have to be able to deal with that. So it's your brain right now. It has your emotions all tied up in knots. And maybe this is a little bit what it feels like trying to untangle those. So if you got some LOLs out there for me, some laughter, go ahead and drop those in the chat. It's nice to know that you're out there paying attention and having some fun. So, the result of this turmoil is emotion sickness. And so what's the cure? Well, you could look at taking some Dramamine pills. Thank you for the LOLs. And Dramamine won't work for emotion sickness. Maybe you could take it because Dramamine makes us a little tired, and maybe you just want to sleep through some of these bad moments. But Dramamine won't really work. But, here's the problem is that this image of the ark is funny, right? All these animals getting on the ark, and Noah's handing out Dramamine to everybody on the ark, because we're all in this together. And I mean that figuratively, but I also mean this literally. Like, when we are in situations with other people, we feel the emotions of other people. So when other people are super stressed out, we feel it, even if we don't notice it cognizantly, or we don't notice it consciously. We feel that. We notice it, and it affects us. And we are meant to feel what other people are feeling. It helps us connect with other people. That's called sensory acuity. It's called emotional intelligence. It's really important. But when people are stressed out and they're out of control, well, we feel that too. So really what we need to focus on are solutions. And so if pills won't do it, Well, I was thinking, well, how could I rebrand my work? And I don't know that we want to use nausea bags as a branding for for my organization. But we can offer these, and I don't think that's really helpful. So back to our sailing puns, right? So we've all heard about the Bering Strait, right? And so the Bering Strait is this really narrow strait through between Russia and Alaska. And there used to be a land bridge there, and that's how they think that human beings kind of work their way across from Asia over into northern North America, and then down. And so that's called the Bering Strait. And maybe today what we're really experiencing is no Bering Strait. Like we just don't have our bearing. This new normal keeps being shaped and things keep changing. It's okay. That's how things go. So what are you going to do about it? Well, some people just want to embrace the whole experience that comes with motion sickness. I don't really know that it's something that I want to deal with. And crackers aren't going to help, right? Ginger ale's not going to do it, and bubbly water's not going to cure you. Maybe a good captain would help you, right? So maybe you've relied on a sailor before, and I'm not talking about Captain Ahab or not Captain Cook. Maybe Sailor Jerry is the sailor that you've been relying on lately, and that's not, of course, a long-term solution. And you can mix it with Coke and lime to avoid scurvy, but that's not really going to help you. So let's talk about what's going on. Is that we have our normal routines, right? We really like our routines. We like how they help us meet our social obligations, our work obligations. We can meet the needs of our family and our community and our work all in one day. We build routines around that to accomplish as many things as we can in our given day. So our routines are off. So first COVID, and now we have all these protests going on and all this anxiety and bad energy going on out there. And so now what do? Well, we bring that stuff that's happening at home in our home lives and in our communities right into our workplaces. And maybe what you're experiencing at work is business as unusual, right? Like things are changing. We're working at home, and I know that people are experiencing furloughs, right? And you can't really change or control that. And we'll talk about control a little bit later. Now, routines are fun, right? And Calvin and Hobbes is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. Um, and my stepmother told me once that I could not live my life like Calvin, and I have proven her wrong to this point, right? So Calvin's going downstairs in the morning, and he said he's getting bored with his routine, right? And so today he's going to have a new kind of cereal. And if you know Calvin, he loves his TV and he loves his sugar, right? So Hobbes is always the one that's the voice of restraint and of logic. And he says the cereal doesn't have any chocolate frosting; it has fiber and raisins, right? And we're all thinking about fiber and health and all those things these days. And then Calvin reverses course. So, big part of life is the horrifying surprise that you get, and that routines can be comforting, right? And so that routines also help protect us from all the craziness that's out there. So it's great to have plans, right? And John Lennon, he said this: is that life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And so, what are you going to do? You have to just react to sometimes what life presents in front of you, and how you're going to deal with that change and the anxiety that comes with that, right? So we're going to talk about flexibility and resiliency and optimism as all tools that are really valuable now more than ever. And you need to get focused, and this is the name of my program. It's called Focus on the 40, and that logo is all about the things that we can control. So 50% of your happiness comes from your genetics, right? It comes from your parents. Thank them for that next time you think about why you're not happy all the time. And then 10% is circumstance. So we're going to talk about circumstance a little bit today, that things that we think provide us with lasting happiness: the new house, the new car, the TV, the new job, the spouse, whatever those things are, kids, all have some influence on our lives, but the happiness that comes from that is sort of fleeting. So the 40% is what we focus on, and that's really all you. These are things that are well within your control, things that you can change. They're easy, and that's the beauty of this, and they're all empirically, scientifically supported. They come from the positive psychology program, which is it's been around for a long time now, and they just have great resources. And that's partly what I'll be sharing with you today. So, part of what life is dealing with the problems, and the problem is that the problem is the problem, not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. And of course, this comes from Jack Sparrow, and he's a pretty funny character from Pirates of the Caribbean. And so it's about changing your attitude and changing your focus. And the problem won't go away on its own. And realizing that the problem won't go away and that the attitude is yours to control is leadership. And leadership starts with you. And you literally can't fight the problem, right? So if we're suffering from emotion sickness, that's just not going to work, tough guy. So it's about you. And it's about knowing yourself and leading yourself. And that's that continuum, right? The more you know about yourself, the more you can lead yourself. And then when you get in that result of knowing yourself and leading yourself, you can lead others. And the result of all this is a happier version of you, a more authentic version of you, a version of you that's in service to other people. You can become less self-focused and more other-focused. And that's hopefully what you'll get out of today as well. So there's three phases of your life. We talked about work, home, and community, and they all affect each other, right? If you're really happy in one area, it bleeds into other parts of your life. And so how do you make sure that you're really fulfilled at work, really fulfilled in your home life, really fulfilled in your community? Because if they're positive, then they all affect each other in a positive and a building way. And if there's negative elements, it can detract things in other places, right? We've all experienced like being really upset at work one day, going home and having really bad interactions at home. And the same thing, having a really rough morning with your kids, getting them off to school, and then you go to work, and then all of a sudden you're just in this bad mood already because of the stress at home. So how do we deal with those? And we'll talk about that. Now, let's talk about happiness before we go much further. And I think this is just a great definition of it that has really helped me. So it's not, happiness isn't just the absence of sadness, right? That's empty, right? And it's not the soaring emotional heights of ecstasy. It's not those great, beautiful moments that we have that can be fleeting. It's just like pleasant, common, and permanent feeling of just satisfied with aspects of life. Because ecstasy is fleeting, and being content and is a state of happiness and satisfaction with life. And that's really what we shoot for. Now, I want you to have more of the highs, right? Let's look at this wave, right? More of the highs here on the left-hand side, those waves going up, back to our C metaphor for today. And then, of course, we have these lows. We have these things happening here in the middle, down at the low. And really what we want to try to do is, my goal for you is to make the crest, those tops of the waves, stay high, go high, and stay higher, and have more of those that stay up high up here, right? And then you have those lows, and that's understandable. And try to make those lows less painful and less deep lows, right? And then you come out of those quicker. And resilience is big on that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about stress. So is stress good or bad? Well, stress is kind of both. And some of the research that comes from Dr. Kelly McGonigal, she's out at Stanford University, is it's really about how you think about stress. And so let's understand stress as part of what we do. Because stress and anxiety and anxiousness are really, really related, right? They're all the same sort of neurochemical or chemical response in our body from adrenaline. And basically what our brain is telling us is when we get the thumbs up signal, it's like, hey, your brain is saying, you're doing a good thing, right? You're doing things that feel good, doing things that are good for your survival. So I'm going to make you feel good with positive emotions. And on the flip side of that is your brain says, this is bad for you. I don't like what you're doing right now. And your brain perceives this as bad for your survival. So your brain is going to make you feel bad, right? Fire is hot. If you get too close to the fire, your brain says, move away from that. Your brain is trying to get you to take action. And that action sometimes can be in the form of fight or flight, right? So fight or flight is a good thing, right? In general, fight or flight helps us stay alive and helps us survive. And if you can use fight or flight as a way to help you survive, that's wonderful. But if you are constantly stressed and you're constantly in fight or flight mode, it's really bad for you. It affects your physiological health. It affects your psychological health. So we have to understand that our brain is trying to tell us something, and sometimes our brain is fairly archaic. Now, we've all experienced trauma in our lives, right? And we all know this thing called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And PTSD it's a real thing, right? And it's not just the military. We experience this in our lives when we have a divorce or we lose a parent or someone in our lives gets really chronically, acutely sick, We experience that, and we experience that trauma, and it's not good for us in the short term. But what people don't know is that, this stress is actually pretty important for us as far as growth and resilience. And so if you can get through those things, you come out on the backside of those things much stronger than you did before. And then when you have more resilience to the big things in life, the things that are really powerful, then you have the ability to deal with the little things in life a lot more easily, right? So we're going to talk about how to maintain that, and how to maintain that using something called PERMA. PERMA is good versus perm, which is and that's perm and that's different, right? And that's David Hasselhoff rocking that perm there. But PERMA comes from this. It comes from the well-being theory in the middle there. Sorry, ignore the meaning section there for a second because it's not meant to be up yet. But well-being theory comes from positive psychology, and it's all about the theory behind what makes us happy, right? And so positive emotions is a big part of that, living the pleasant life. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And then engagement is part of it. So we won't talk too much about this, but really being engaged in your life and thinking about things that really make you feel good and you lose track of time. Those are all wonderful things. The state of flow is part of that. We won't spend a ton of time on that today. Relationships, I think, and the science will support that they're the most important thing out there for our happiness. So having positive relationships in your life is really, really important. We will talk a little bit today about social support. Meaning is the next one on there. And so having purpose in your life and having life satisfaction, having what they call positive affects, a feeling like you're doing good things with your time, the meaningful life. And then achievement, the accomplished life. Like, so are you getting things done? And do you set goals? Do you have success? Do you understand what that is? Do you have mastery of some things? And those are all things that we won't really talk too much about today, but they're really important to your overall health. So let's talk about positive emotion first. And this comes from our PERMA model, right? And, back to our little wave here is that, positive emotions come and go, negative emotions come and go. Negative emotions stick around with us longer than positive emotions. And so those emotions are caused by neurochemicals. And we'll walk through those really quickly in just a little bit. But what we want to do is we want to, again, try to get those positive emotions to go higher and to last longer and to be more frequent, and then to have less of those negative emotions in our lives. And our emotions are just like that, just like waves, up and down. It's natural from day to day. That's just how it goes. So here's the problem, is that we have these little tiny brains, right? And this is our friend Homer Simpson, Homer Simpson. And our brains are actually not small. They're really big. They haven't changed structurally in 200,000 years. They've been this big for about 500,000 years. But the world has changed so much in that time. But the one thing that hasn't changed in that time frame is that our brains are social situation simulators. Our brains like to work through social situations and try to figure out the best course of action out there because it's a tool for helping us survive. Now, there's a point where simulating is not good, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we've all simulated it in our brain with, some of those hypotheticals and social situations that we're working through in our brain in the shower. And so this is a funny little book cover, and maybe you get a little laugh out of that and throw it in the chat box if you do. But, here's how we experience emotions. And I asked my designer to, put this information, a graphic designer, put this information into a table format, and she's very literal. So this is what it looks like. And so on the left, you have the neurochemicals that give us positive emotions. And the one that's beautiful here is oxytocin. You can get this all the time, and it's maybe something that we're a little deficient in because of COVID. It's kept us separate from other people. We haven't been bonding or touching with people, having as many positive social interactions. And positive social interactions don't have to be big to be powerful. The science behind this is really pretty clear and evident that just these little interactions of like talking to a bank teller or talking to someone in the checkout line at the grocery store or seeing our friend as we're walking down the street, going to do something else, and we just have a nice little interaction are all little moments where we get positive emotions caused by oxytocin. We also get those in big pulses, like when we give birth to a child, well, not me specifically, but that helps you really bond with that child, right? And we get that from touch and hugs, and of course that act of procreation, and we're not going to talk about that today. So dopamine's the next one. We get that from completing tasks and chasing rewards. And we'll talk about how that fits in with the 10% that I mentioned before. Serotonin is the next one, and that's what we get from recognition and pride and accomplishment, status and respect, right? So those are important to us, and those help us survive having status, pride, respect, and accomplishing things. So our brain really likes it when we do that. And the final one is endorphins. So when you're laughing at my jokes today, you're actually potentially getting yourself a little bit of endorphin response there. And there's a footnote there that says stealing will give you endorphins. Not really, unless you're running, and we get that from running and moving, and that really helps us. That was one of the things that helped us survive, and that process of running, excuse me, was something that stimulates our diaphragm to move in and out. And when we're laughing, our diaphragm is doing the same thing, and so that makes us. It gives us the opportunity to get some endorphins as well. So laugh today, laugh really hard. Just make sure you're on mute. Okay, so the trick with all these neurochemicals is that we can get more of these in our lives. We can have more of these positive emotions, and it takes a commitment. And we won't talk too much more about this today, but that's the process of neuroplasticity, is recognizing your behavior, recognizing your emotions, recognizing you can change those, and it'll be uncomfortable at first, but if you do it for 21 days, do it with some repetition, and especially if you do it with some emotion. So you know what? That's how I used to do things. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm taking this new decision. I do it all the time with this, right? This phone thing here of mine is something where you can get little dopamine hits by opening up apps and seeing notifications and seeing that people are paying attention to your life. But if you open it up and there's no notifications, well, you don't get that dopamine response. And you're like, oh, people don't like me. They're not paying attention to my Facebook post, right? So what did I do? Well, I decided to take the Facebook app off of my phone. And I still check Facebook on my computer, but I just do it less frequently. And it allows me to just focus on other things in my life. So every time I do that, every time I recognize that Facebook is not on this phone anymore, I'm like, oh, good. That was a really good decision for you. I may feel good about that, right? Positive emotion. And I'll continue to do that for 21 days, probably leave the app off my phone for longer than that, but I feel good about that new behavior change. Okay. So let's talk about the negative side of some things that can stimulate some emotions. On the negative end of the spectrum, I call those the big three. So the first one is rumination. So the first one is rumination. The second one is catastrophizing. And the third one is comparison, specifically social comparison. Now we're going to walk through each of these today. And don't worry, if you don't get all of this, you're going to get a resource from me at the end that will have notes on each of these things. And you'll get the slide presentation as well. So don't worry if you don't catch all of this. All right, let's talk first about rumination. So rumination, you could also describe it as overthinking, needlessly, passively, endlessly, pondering things, right? And so just getting caught in those cycles. All right, so when that happens, we need to kind of break that cycle. And so how do we do that? Well, why? First of all, why would we do that? Well, when we ruminate and we do that, it's negatively biasing our thinking, right? It affects us. It sustains or worsens our sadness. It saps our motivation and interferes with our concentration, our initiative. And so we want to stop that. And that's actually a great word to use, of stopping that, because that's the tool for this. And I use this for myself. I get in those situations where I'm standing in the shower and I'm thinking through a social situation and I'm having a negative thought about that interaction. And I have to be like, what are you doing? Stop, right? So anytime you see this tool icon come up, we're going to talk about one of those tools. So I literally say to myself out loud, stop, right? I'm just like, what am I doing? Stop. Move on to something else. Now, the deeper trick on this is not to just say stop, but like to refocus on something else. So find a way to distract yourself and get yourself out of that pattern. Find something immersive, right? So we talked about engagement a little bit earlier. That's called flow state. That was coined by the researcher and psychologist Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. That's really someone's name. And he talked about finding things that give us, when we get this flow state, right? So really deeply engage in something, we lose track of time, we're happy and focused. So it could be listening to music or creating art or playing sports, going for a run, even playing a video game. I'm not suggesting that as a tool for happiness. A TV show, a comedian, just something that immerses you and gets you really focused on something else. Go pet your dog, hang out with a friend, do something that just requires all of your attention to distract you, and use that tool of stopping to just initiate that process. Okay, so there's a tool for rumination. Let's talk about the next one of the big bad three. So making the worst of a bad situation. So that was our anxiety girl, right? Making the worst of any situation. We call that catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is a really powerful thing. And I should tell you that if you ever get into these patterns and these tools don't work for you and you really need deeper therapeutic help, go see someone that can do those sort of things. They have amazing tools for people, excuse me, that are largely on the negative side of zero. For most of us, if zero is neutral in our lives, there's a scale of -10. That's depressive and suicidal and dealing with really intense anxiety. The tools that we have here may not really help you get back up to zero. Really what these tools are for are people that, they're on the plus side of zero and that are living at a 6 out of 10 and want to get to an 8 and want to stay closer to 8 and hit 10 more often. And that's how these things can work. But first, sometimes we have to get these things out of our way, right? We have to get this catastrophizing mindset, kind of control that. All right, so how do we do that with catastrophizing? Well, we do that with an approach called worst, best, and most likely. And you'll get a chance to explore this on your own more deeply later. So we take any of these scenarios, right? Situation that's coming up. And catastrophizing is the worst possible scenario of all that, just making a catastrophe out of something. So how do we do something differently about that? Well, what if we were to say to ourselves, all right, that's the worst possible scenario, and it's probably very unlikely that's going to happen. What's the best possible scenario? So actually take some time to explore that and lay that out for yourself. And then what's the most likely scenario? Now, for some of us, the worst scenario might be, well, sometimes we have to delete cookies on our computer. And of course, for Cookie Monster, that would be a terrible thing. But when we do this activity and we do the worst, best, and most likely, we can take that most likely piece, we can set a plan around that because that's the stuff we can control. So let's look at that specifically as it relates to this thing called COVID-19 that's still out there, right? So in the area that's outside that gray circle are things that really right now that we cannot control, right? So initially it was the amount of toilet paper at stores. And we didn't have a whole lot of control over that. We ran out of toilet paper, which is a crazy thing. But there's other things on the outside that you can't really control, like predicting what will happen. That is really just outside of what we can do. And of course, paying attention to bad predictions that are inaccurate, that are on social media, not really helping things, right? And you can't control the actions of others. But there's a ton of things that you can control. Look at this inner circle. What are you going to do about protecting yourself, protecting your family, your friends? How are you going to treat other people? You can maintain your own social distance. That's a huge thing for protecting yourself. So you can set a plan. What 4 things that you're realistically in control of, and you'll get a chance to explore this a little further on your own. So I chose to control certain things, right? I thought it would be important during a crisis like that to have a full fridge. Here's an actual photo of my fridge, and I didn't even have that much applesauce and milk after that. Give me an LOL if you're out there. But controlling what you can control is part of the plan. And so I put a plan into place to say, I'm going to have plenty of food. I'm going to keep myself healthy, happy, safe. I'm going to stay active because I know active was really important to me. Thank you for the LOLs. So, all right, let's look at our third and final of our big 3. And this is a social comparison. So evaluating your success compared to those around you. Now, is social comparison bad or good? Well, just like stress, it's kind of both, right? So let's talk about the good first. So the happiest people want success for others and not failure for others. And you can use that as an inspiration to be motivated by the successes of others. If they can do it, so can I. Now, we don't all have the same skills as other people. And if we have a chance to really getting you, we'll come back to that later, is we all have these unique skills, and some people are just really good at other stuff. Like I love standing on stage and public speaking. Other people are terrified of that, right? They don't want to do it. They're not good at it. They don't want to get better at it. They just don't want to do it. I love it. So that's something that, I can really be proud of on myself. And other people can look to me and say, man, I would love to be as good as he is on stage most days, and strive for that and use that as motivation for them to get better, right? So the bad part of this is, remember that chasing resources is something that our brains like to do. And so, for example, the dopamine is the response we get when we go find resources and we get a piece of food or even a piece of like banana cream pie or coconut cream pie or whatever your favorite pie is. It's loaded with fat and sugar. For the human brain, our brain knows what's in that. And back in the old cave people days, sugar and fat were really limited. So just as you're about to have that resource, that first bite of that pie, your brain says, good job, you got us resources. Now, there's problems with that, right? Because that banana cream pie is full of stuff that we don't necessarily need on a regular basis. It should be a treat. But it's super accessible now. It's easy, it's affordable, it's cheap in most cases, right? So remember that our brain wants us to go after those rewards. And so if we see someone else getting a new car and a TV and a house and all those things, it can make us not feel good because they're getting things that we would like to have. So remember, our brains want us to go after those things, but remember also that that's only 10% of what really makes us happy. And so we'll get that TV and it'll make us happy for a while. And then we're going to want that next biggest TV, like this one right here, a 16-foot TV. I couldn't even fit that in my house if I wanted to, right? So someone's always going to have a bigger house, a TV, a car, make more money. There's always going to be people that have more than you. So just remember, that's only 10% of life circumstances. So how do we turn off this concern about social comparisons? I have several tools for this, but this is the one I really love. This one is called Hunt for the Good Stuff. So this is Mr. Bill Murray from my favorite documentary, Caddyshack. And his words of advice are Gunga La Gunga, which means 3 good things. And so Bill Murray's character was hunting gophers, of course, but I want you to hunt for something different. I want you to hunt for the good stuff in your life. And so what you can do every day, and this is a great journaling activity for you to do as you go to bed, put a little journal right next to your bed. I just want you to find 3 things that were really good that happened each day, right? Three things. And they don't have to be big things. You could be like, I had dinner with my family. We all sat around the table. We had a pleasant conversation, right? That's an easy thing, but that's something that you shouldn't take for granted because there's a lot of really positive neurochemistry going on there. Then the second part of that is how did you make those things happen, right? So there's three good things, and then what role did you play in making those happen? And then ideally, how did you use your natural character strengths in that? We won't talk about character strengths today, but that's a huge part of the foundation of all the work I do with Focus on the 40. And I'd love to explore that with you further at some other point. So what can we do about optimism? And let's make this transition now between those three things that were just kind of really the negatives. And let's talk about optimism, because optimism is amazing and optimism is really powerful. And I want you to have that. So let's first talk about the definition. So it's the expectation of a positive outcome coupled with the self-confidence of how it will get accomplished. Okay, so there's two parts there, and those two parts are really important. So you're expecting positive things to happen, and you have the confidence to see that they're going to get accomplished. Seeing that they're going to get accomplished means that you are taking an active role in that, and self-confidence is built in with that, and that's perseverance, and that's also really positive, right? So why would we bother with, optimism? Well, significantly, the science says that it's associated with higher quality of life, and regardless of age or gender, right? So you can be an older person, and if you're optimistic, you'll be happier in life than other people, or have a higher quality of life. A pessimistic style was found to be associated with depressive symptoms and just a lot less positive affect in life. And so, being optimistic is really powerful. Now, is optimism, is it learned? Well, yeah. And, I'm not saying that optimism should be used in all situations with the same expectation. Let's see if I can get this video to play. I have to hit a button because I love this little video. Oh no, I thought I knew how to make it happen. Well, if you just Google cat jumping barn fail, this comes up, and it's this really funny video of this little cat. Oh well. There we go. There we go. So it's a short little clip here, but it's this cat, right? And this cat's using math and some algorithms and some calculations to make the determination of how to jump up onto this roof. And so, optimistic styles, we should not be completely things happening for us all the time. Here's our cat doing the calculations. And right to the end, and it stops. That's not what it's supposed to do. I was optimistic that this would work, and of course I'm getting internet lag, and that's affecting things. So right towards the end here goes our cat, and the cat completely misses. And maybe some of you saw that coming, but that one just makes me crack up every time. And so, if we talk about things that actually can help us be distracted, and, sometimes you just need a little humor in your life to help you be distracted from things that wouldn't otherwise be positive. So let me go back to my other view here. And so let's talk about optimism. And so there's three things that can help us with this optimistic mindset. It's whether or not something, in our view on things is that it's something that's permanent, or is it personal, or pervasive. And I should say and instead of or there. And I would call those the three P's of pessimism, so that this problem, this thing that just popped up is permanent, right? It's personal, I caused it, there was no other outside causes, and it's pervasive. This is just my life always, right? So we can challenge that. And there's an opportunity for you to challenge something here with me. And so get ready to jump on your chat there, because I'd love for you to engage with me real quick. And I want you to think about something here, and I think about you could be one of two heroes, right? And are you Captain Optimism or Pessimistic Man, right? So Captain Optimism says, I will defeat you, and Pessimistic Man says, yeah, probably, right? That's not much of a superhero trait, and it's actually pretty funny. I love doing stuff with superheroes. I did a training with youth recently, and we talked about superheroes, and we talked about superhero characteristics. So are you optimistic or pessimistic? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to open that up real quick. All right, Catherine says optimistic. Denise says optimistic. Good. Look at these optimists in here. Good. And so optimism can be a mindset, right? It's also a character strengths. And we won't talk too much more about character strengths today. but we all have this unique mix of character strengths, and hope and future mindedness or optimism is one of them, and it's one of my top 5, and I use it all the time. And of course, it's a great thing as an entrepreneur. It's also something that's really, really valuable in times like this, where it's just like, oh, what's the future look like? I don't know what the future looks like, but I know that I'm going to figure it out. Right? That's optimism in action. And I know that this isn't going to last forever, and that's fine. All right, so we have Captain Optimism and Pessimistic Man, and we'll use that as an opportunity to explore optimism in action. Now, if you couple Anxiety Girl with Pessimistic Man, you get the definitely defeatable duo, right? So we don't want that in our lives. We don't want stress to derail us, and we don't want pessimism to undermine us, right? And the negative health consequences and all the negative consequences that come with that. So let's explore it. So when we talk about something that's permanent, right? It's what Optimism Man would say. Captain Optimism, I'm sorry, would say, this rarely happens, right? So this isn't a situation that happens all the time. This isn't my life, right? Or, this always happens. And we call this difference in explaining things literally explanatory style. So how do you explain the things that are happening in your life? You're like, oh, this bad thing happens. This doesn't happen to me all the time, right? This isn't just how my life goes. And in your homework that you'll get from me tonight, I talk about in a blog where my truck got stolen. And not only did my truck get stolen, I watched my truck driving away, right? What a crazy thing to experience in life. And you know what came out of that? Extraordinarily positive things, right? And I knew that that wasn't my life. I knew that it was just a thing. It was a truck. I have insurance. I can be replaced, right? So there's optimism playing out right there. It's not something that happens all the time. All right, so let's talk about personal. The second part of our explanatory style is, well, this one thing, like I just didn't study well this one time, right? Or it was too noisy where I was trying to study, and that really affected what I was doing. Now, we're not trying to externalize all the blame and put the blame on other people. If you didn't study at all, then you can explain a bad grade on a test or a course, right? But the other end of this, from Pessimism Man, is, I'm just stupid, right? Like, that says that I just am dumb as a person and I won't figure things out. That's pessimism in action. So you can challenge things that are saying, it's like, just like, I got a bad grade on that test, and I'm just not great at math, but I'm really good at creative writing, right? So there's a way to look at things in a really positive light, and that's optimism. And the third part of this is pervasive. So it's just one bad test, right? Like, it's not the end of the world. I can recover from this. I can get better at studying math, or I can find a tutor, right? That's the other thing with optimism, is that optimists always look for strategies for solutions, right? They also take on this challenge in front of them with the approach of overcoming that. Versus, pessimism, I fail at everything, right? So here's our tool on this when we get into this mindset. Is it true or false? And so you can look at situations and just say, all right, let's talk about this for a second. Internally, I'm just going to talk about this. Like, this is temporary. This isn't something that was going to last forever. No, this is not true that I'm stupid. I'm not entirely to blame. And this isn't a regular occurrence, right? This isn't just my whole life isn't going to be like this. It's just one episode in my life where something just didn't go that great. And if you're resilient, we'll talk about that just next, is you can recover from those things. You rebound from those things and you'll be fine. Okay, so let's talk about what that looks like. So let's wrap it up with resilience. And building resilience is really the tool that we're going to look on. And I want to give you just a quick overview of what resilience looks like, right? So resilience, as a definition, is the mental process and behaviors that people use to protect themselves from the harmful effects of stressors, right? So resilience is like protecting yourself from like being affected by negative things, and also that recovery is in there as well. How quickly you rebound from negative things that happen in your lives. We talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. We talked about, after that, post-traumatic growth. And that's something that people experience after stressors and trauma that help them grow as a person. And we don't talk enough about post-traumatic growth. We talk about post-traumatic stress like, once this thing happens, you're forever damaged. The science just says that isn't true. Once that thing happens, you will be changed, right? And if you lose a limb in the military, your life is going to change. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be the same as it was before. But what's amazing is that they measure these impacts to these people in the military after this happens, and their happiness after 2 months, 6 months, 3 months, when they kind of get back to like their new normal, They're just as happy as they were before. In most cases, it's not for every person, of course, but we have this amazing propensity for resilience. All right, so let's talk about the elements of resilience look like. We could break that into 5 parts, and we've talked about some of those today very specifically. So first, optimism, right? So having optimism. So recognizing that bad things happen, they're not permanent, we can recover from them. Enough said about that. So efficacy and self-esteem. So like I did this through effort and skill and not just some luck of character. Like this comes to me naturally. Well, fine. If it comes to you naturally, celebrate. These are natural, positive things that you have within you, right? Strengths are my favorite finding positive psychology. So I always kind of come back to those, and I really think they're foundational. And if you want to learn more about your character strengths, I'd love to do that with you. I offer a free coaching session for any new client. So positive affect. So is the next one here. And that's, finding meaning and purpose. So how do you use your unique mix of character strengths in service to others? And that second part is really positive, really important, in service to others. So this comes from Nietzsche, who says, he who has a why can live to bear through almost any how. And if you've read the book by Viktor Frankl called A Man's Search for Meaning, Living Through Auschwitz, if you have a why and you have hope, then you can get through any how. And people that survived Auschwitz had hope. So do you know your why? And if you don't, well, let's talk. All right, next one. Social support. Social support's really important, right? I talked about relationships being everything before. So positive relationships really are everything. And this doesn't mean that you have hundreds of friends necessarily. It just means you have really strong, positive, close relationships with a few people. So nurture those. And you don't have to worry about being everyone's best friend, but certainly social support is reciprocal. So you getting support from other people is really important. And having that support come back to you is really important as well. And then the final piece is life satisfaction. So, let's focus on that right now, because remember, life has ups and downs, right? So there's our wave back here again. And the idea is, there's this black line in the middle that's dashed, and it's like, that's kind of our normal set point. And that's 50% determined by our parents. And then we can shift that line up, up, up. And then of course we want to experience more of things on the plus side. So we want to shorten the duration of things that don't feel good and extend the feeling of things that feel good. And there's techniques around both of those. Bad things will still happen. We can rebound faster from those events. So, and we can also make sure that, those negative events don't escalate and get worse, and we don't exacerbate those situations. And that's all about having really good tools with other people in most cases, right? Also good decision making, and I've made my own mistakes, right? So anyway, how do we do this? Well, one of the techniques that I love is called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll pick up my phone, and I do this every day. And you don't have to do this every day for it to be effective, but I set my phone every day at 12:35. Right? It's actually I would love for it to be 12:34, but my phone doesn't let me do that. So I set it for 12:35, but 12:34 is the focus, right? So that's midday every day. It's about noontime. And at 12:34 every day, my phone goes off, gives me a little notification, and I say 5 things I'm grateful for, right? And so what we're trying to do is like build more of those positive things that on that wave, just having 5 things. And it doesn't have to be like huge things, right? They can just be little things that you're grateful for. 12:34 every day, most of us are eating food, eating hopefully good food. Celebrate the fact that you have food in front of you and that you have nourishment available to you. I celebrate people. I celebrate all sorts of things. And if you go back to that pie chart, you can look for ways to make sure that you celebrate all those things in there. I always make sure I celebrate someone else in my life each day for what they bring into my life. Okay. So, everything that we're talking about today requires some action. And so here we are learning new things, and that's great. I love sharing those things with you. But there's something else we have to do, and that's taking action. And back to my friend Calvin and Hobbes, taking action doesn't mean just like expecting your life to change through magic. That's not how it's going to happen. It doesn't have to be hard. Any of the stuff I showed you today, you can be doing in just a few minutes every day. You don't have to do it all at once, and that's the nature of what I'm going to share with you. That when you start doing this, you start getting you, right? And we all have a mix. We have leadership styles, we have character strengths, we have neuroplasticity, we have life experiences, we have unique gifts, and they're all the mix of who we are. So when you start getting you, then you can start putting you out there, the real you, the authentic you, the you want to be in the world. And everyone wins when you do that, right? And so you'll start getting a chance to start getting you a little bit more when you do the homework. And the homework's short. It's I think a 4-page document. And if you want to dive deeper, then there's an opportunity for you to do that. There'll be a link in the homework for you to look at that. It's my new workbook. It's called Head to Toe Transformation. It's 53 pages and it's a deep dive, right? It's funny and it's fast paced, but it's transformative, and it's going to give you skills to work on all the things that we talked about today and so much more. So there's homework coming in your email soon. Yes, you have homework. You're going to be fine. And just like Calvin before, right? You have to be the one to do this. You can't just make some magical spell and expect your homework to be done. And you can't speed read and flip through all the pages and expect it to be done. You have to do the work, right? And there's, a little learning today is great, but cementing this learning and changing into the authentic you requires effort. So I want you to know that I'm here. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Free 30-minute coaching session for anybody that wants it. So if you get through the homework and you're like, man, I really like this one thing and I would really like to focus on this one part of my life, just schedule some time with me. We'll talk through it. We'll give you some things. I'll point you in the right direction to get you on your own path. and honestly, if you're really, really feeling depressive, suicidal, any of those things, dealing with really intense anxiety, I'm not skilled. I'm not skilled in that area. I'm not a licensed therapist. I probably can't help you with that. Excuse me. I'm happy to talk with you anyway, but please, seek therapy for that. There's free resources almost anywhere where you live or online if you don't want to do it in your own community. So if you need teams, a team needs a tailored approach. Let's talk about that as well. I'm happy to help you with what you're struggling with. And with that, I say thank you. I'm going to stick around for questions for just a little bit. You can pop those in the chat box and expect an email to come from me, hopefully by the end of the day. If not, it'll come to you first thing tomorrow, because I want you to keep going with this. Like this was really fun for me to do, and I hope you got entertainment out of it, but I hope you also got some really actionable tools. And from there, I'm going to stop. So thank you for your time. If you need to take off and drop off, I completely understand, especially for our friends off on the East Coast. Thanks to everybody from North Carolina that came out. Say hi to Joanna for me and tell her I appreciate her sharing this. And I'll take a second to answer some questions if you want to pop them in the chat. And if you want the question to be anonymous, you can just toggle down where it says that it goes to everyone, and you can just send it to me individually. Okay. Catherine, thank you for your question. Just type it in here. Type your email in. You're very welcome, Triffy. Type your email in, and I'll make sure that you get it. Gotcha. That was easy. Thank you, Beverly. Appreciate the kind words. You're very welcome, Catherine. It's my pleasure to do this. This is truly, I don't talk about this. I will share my slides. Absolutely, Deanna. Yeah, one of the things that, I talk about when we get into the meaning part of the work that I do is your work, or is your work your career, right? I would call a career something like a notch up from a work, just a job that we go to, or is it work, or is it calling? Like, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it feels really good to do this and to share things with people. And of course, the feedback, the laughs, and the kind words really do mean a lot to me. But yes, I will send the presentation out, and then you'll get a PDF of the homework file as well. And the homework's yours to do. It's your pace. It's your own thing. It's your own life. And I love the quote by Mary Oliver. It comes out of one of her poems, and it says, what are you going to do with this one wild and fantastic life that you get? And that's what I want to help people do. So cool. Well, I don't see any questions popping up. I'll be sticking around for just a few minutes more. But thank you all for being here today and for participating. Thank you, Deanna. All right. With that, I will sign off. Thank you all for being here. Have a great night. Expect an email from me. Thank you for being here.